answer is, who are we before we were slaves? Which is very important, right? Here's what I'll start with. Give me the book of Deuteronomy chapter 28 before we get started. Give me Deuteronomy 1 and 1. I want to read this first. I want to do a little prelude before we get into the actual presentation, because this is very important that we have a greater understanding of who we are as a people. You have to understand, in the stripping of a people's culture, you can now create those people to be whatever you want them to be. When they have no heritage, no religion, no culture to now tap into. That's why when somebody do something cool, they be like, oh, she did it for the culture. He did it for the culture. You feel me? It could be something like, hey, first black billionaire rapper. Oh yeah, he doing it for the culture. For what culture? For the African American culture. It's not for what we were before they made us African American. What we're saying is, in American society, this black person has had a level of success. We call that doing it for the culture. Deuteronomy chapter 1 and 1. Watch this, y'all.
The book of Deuteronomy, chapter 1 and verse 1. Moses spake unto all Israel on this side of Jordan in the wilderness.
So when you read the scriptures, right? This is Moses, and he's talking to the Israelites. All right. It's important that we emphasize this, because a lot of people are not familiar with the Old Testament of the Bible. A lot of people are simply familiar with Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, and on forward. And it's almost taboo to read the Old Testament of the Bible. But it's the only book. As you look at all of these books that we have here, that's sitting here, not one of these books you will pick up and start in the middle of the book and just started reading. Nothing. You read Moby Dick, if you read Dr. Seuss books as a child, nobody starts at the middle of the book. We always start at the beginning. So it's important to know that Moses is talking to the Israelites. Give me verse 28. Deuteronomy 28 and verse 1. And this is what this is based off of, this presentation. But what I'm doing is I'm showing you that the presentation is valid according to the scriptures. All right? Watch this. Deuteronomy 28 and 1.
The book of Deuteronomy, chapter 28 and verse 1. And it shall come to pass, if thou shalt hearken diligently unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to observe and to do all his commandments, which I command thee this day, that the Lord thy God will set thee on high above all nations of the earth.
What I'm reading right now is what I like to call an ultimatum. If you got kids, you tell your kids, look, you bring home straight A's, I'll buy you that video game you want. You bring home straight F's, and there's a consequence for the straight F's. After that, it's the kids' decision whether or not they're going to do right or wrong, right? That's what we're reading, essentially, that God is handing to Moses to give to us. He said, y'all keep the commandments, I'll bless you. You'll be the top people in the nation. Read verse 15.
Verse 15. But it shall come to pass, if thou wilt not hearken unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to observe to do all his commandments and his statutes, which I command thee this day.
That what?
That all these curses shall come upon thee and overtake thee.
The other side of the coin, y'all. The first side was you listen, you get blessed. The second side is if you don't listen, you get cursed. We all on the same page so far?
Yes, sir.
Now listen. The next question is, which one did the Israelites do? That's the next question. The question has to be, okay, if God put down a line of blessings and he put down a line of curses, which one did the Israelites do and what are they following? Right? I think it should be obvious if we all here to try to figure out who we are, which one they follow. But it is important that we answer this in the Bible. That way you don't walk away from here and say, well, those guys say we under the curses. No, the Bible says that the Israelites did. Listen, watch this. Give me the book of Daniel, chapter 9 and verse 10. The reason we have to prove it in the Bible is because the scriptures say that God be true and every man a liar. This whole thing can be a facade if we cannot turn around and show you that, no, the Israelites really did break God's commandments. They really did not listen. Therefore, they would be under the curses. Watch this. It's going to bear witness. Read.
The book of Daniel, chapter 9 and verse 10. Neither have we obeyed the voice of the Lord our God to walk in his laws, which he set before us by his servants, the prophets. Yea, all Israel have transgressed thy law.
So did they listen or did they not listen? It's clear. The scriptures say all Israel have transgressed thy law. Go ahead.
even by departing, that they might not obey thy voice. Therefore the curse is poured upon us.
Therefore, what is poured on us?
The curse is poured upon us.
What curse is he talking about? What curse would he be talking about? The one that Moses spoke about in Deuteronomy 28. He will receive those curses. We as a nation will receive those curses as opposed to receiving the blessings. And that, my friend, is why we have this presentation now. It's because as we start to go into these curses, what it does is it will strip the Israelites of everything that they ever knew. It will strip them of their language. It will strip them of their land. It will strip them of their culture, their holidays, the way they dress, the foods they would and would not eat. God said, if you wouldn't serve me, I'm going to make you serve your enemies. And our enemies took it to the extreme when we served them. This is the only captivity in the history of the world. The transatlantic slave trade is the only captivity in the history of the world where the people were taken from their culture and never allowed to continue with their own culture at all. You could not be an Israelite when you got on them slave ships, when you got off them slave ships. You see it in famous movies like Roots, 12 Years a Slave, and be the new name in you. They change your culture completely. This is that captivity where we were completely destroyed from our heritage, and that's what we're going to go into. We're going to show y'all through visual proof that Deuteronomy 28 is talking about us. The goal is that when you leave, you know. You don't think. You don't, I guess, you're going to know when you leave here that we are the Israelites that the Bible speaks of, based off Moses telling the Israelites. All right, let's get into it. So, just so y'all know, we are Israel united in Christ. We were founded in 2003. Our goal is to change the hearts and the minds of our people. At the end of the day, what we have replaced our actual heritage with is garbage. That's just the easiest way for me to see it. I know that might offend some people, but I really don't believe that we were made by God to sell drugs to one another. You can't convince me of that. You can't convince me that we were made by God to be baby mamas and baby daddies. Hate one another, shoot each other down in the street the way we shoot each other down in the street. Now we know that there's outside factors, institutional racisms and things like that. But listen, when they drop the drugs in our community, somebody picking it up selling it. So we want to change the hearts and the minds of the people. We don't believe that it's just finances that change our people. We don't believe that it's just, we need more jobs or we need education. If you give a crackhead $1 million, you got $1 million worth of crack. That's just the reality. The mindset of the people has to be changed first. So our job is we want to change the minds of our people. Blacks and Hispanics must learn the truth that they are the biblical 12 tribes of the nation of Israel. Disobedience to God's laws has been the root cause of all our troubles. That's important because once we establish what the root cause of our problems is, now it can be fixed, right? You can't put a Band-Aid on a bullet wound. Once you understand what's going on, now you can get the treatment that's necessary. Blacks and Hispanics everywhere suffer the same racial, social, economic problems worldwide. Voting is not the answer. It has not helped us. We've had a black president. We have many Hispanic governors, senators, councilmen, mayors, but yet we still stay in the same downtrodden position. There's a reason that the east side of Indianapolis or the west side of Indianapolis looks much different from the north side of Indianapolis. There's a reason why our streets look the way they look and their streets look the way they look. All of these are realities that we live in every day. Christian churches have failed us. It's time for a change in these last days. We must give the Bible's medicine to sick people. Then and only then will we begin to change. What are we saying? We're saying that even though you see us with Bibles, this is not a religion. And we're going to go through that as we go through more of the scriptures. You all will be able to ask questions. But what you will realize is that a East Indian person is East Indian and their religious beliefs is intertwined into their culture. Right? If you're Chinese, you don't celebrate the New Year on January 1st. You have a Chinese New Year that you celebrate. So every group of people that you see on the planet, their culture and their religion is intertwined together. With our people, our religion is on top of us. Meaning we are this people. We have no heritage. We don't have this, we don't have that. I'll substitute it with religion. That's why we made the statement that the Christian churches have failed us, because it does not teach us who we are and what we should and shouldn't be doing. All right, Deuteronomy 28 and verse 15. Can you read it again?
The book of Deuteronomy, chapter 28, verse 15.
By the way, this is a real picture of Moses. It's an actual image of Moses right here. Ancient image. What you're going to learn is, the more that you study, you're going to learn that images before the early 1400s were always painted black of biblical figures. It was not until the Renaissance period when you start seeing these images now change to a different color. The color that is common today. We all know what color that is. Go ahead, read this.
Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 15. But it shall come to pass, if thou wilt not hearken unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to observe to do all his commandments and his statutes, which I command thee this day, that all these curses shall come upon thee and overtake thee. And
we already read in the book of Daniel that the Israelites didn't listen. So let's see some of these curses. Verse 16.
Verse 16. Cursed shall thou be in the city.
Listen, when you look at the cities, the inner cities of where we live, right? Or the things that have happened to us throughout the cities of America. How many of y'all are familiar with the Tulsa, Oklahoma massacre? You know, a lot of people don't know that this thing existed. They found out from a TV show about 2 years ago. Amazing. Yeah. I'm talking about our people not knowing. This is what they call Black Wall Street. A man was on an elevator, and a white woman claimed she was sexually assaulted on the elevator, and they went and burnt the whole town down. That town was comprised of 40 acres of businesses, churches, airports, hospitals, movie theaters. Burnt the whole thing down. When you search history, you'll be hard pressed to find another nation building a community and that community getting burnt down based off of the offense of one person. They dropped bombs. They brought in Gatling guns. Actually, we went to Tulsa, Oklahoma. And we went to the museum in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and they have pictures of Gatling guns on the back of pickup trucks. Now, I don't know if you know what a Gatling gun is, but that's the equivalent of a military machine gun today. That thing can shoot bullets. It sounds like it's whistling. You don't even hear pop, pop, pop like a gun. It sounds like a whistle. That's how fast they shoot. And they went through Tulsa, Oklahoma, and they shot it up. But here's my point. You never saw this happen in Koreatown. You never saw this happen in Chinatown. You cannot find it in history where Chinese people built communities and they came in and burnt them to the ground and dropped bombs on them. Same thing with Philly. How many of y'all know what Lake Lanier is? It's a very famous lake. It wasn't always a lake. It used to be a black town. When the droughts hit on Lake Lanier, you had people that were fishing and looked down and they saw the signs for the streets. And they started scratching their head like, man, how did street signs get all under Lake Lanier? Lake Lanier was a black-owned town. They make this one famous, but they don't tell you about the Lake Laniers, the Rosewood, Floridas, and all of these other places where we did, you know how they say, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. The thing is, we did. The thing is, we did. Coming out of slavery, we did. We were minded to take those skills that we had as slaves and use them for ourselves, because we were the working force in the world. And that translated to money because we were no longer slaves. But what it also translated to was to this curse right here. The Bible said whatever you put your hand to do, you're going to be cursed in it doing it because you broke God's commandments. Cursed shall thou be in the city. Read.
And cursed shall thou be in the field.
This is what they want you to know that you started from. It is very important that when you leave here today that you know that you did not start as a slave. Your people don't come from slaves. They actually come from something much greater than just slavery when you read it. As a matter of fact, watch this. I got this book over here. It's called Babylon to Timbuktu. Now, a lot of this I want to go into a little bit later, but I think that this is important right now because I made the statement that we were not meant to be slaves. We were not born slaves. Page 90, start reading right here. I want to show you men something because it's important that you understand that you do come from greatness. And anything that we achieve here is just us achieving what we was achieving before they turned us into Negroes and African Americans. It should not be a big thing when a black boy becomes a doctor, becomes a lawyer. starts his own business, becomes a millionaire. That's our normal mindset as the Israelites. Now, a Negro or African American that achieves these things from the ghetto, they have to be celebrated. This is why we must change the minds of our people. Read this.
The black Jews had an advantage over the African tribes. They carried their culture, history, laws, and written records with them.
That's the Bible. This is our culture, history, records, and laws. That's called the Bible today. Go ahead.
This assured them a constant precedent for the development of a higher social organization because of the stability of the black Jewish culture. The Jews were not absorbed into the autochthonous population. In fact, the Jews absorbed some of the native tribes.
So other people started imitating us. Here's the point. Go ahead.
The Jews made use of every opportunity. They were industrious and skillful people.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
In the Jewish Ghanaian state were found kings.
So in Ghana, the Jewish Ghanaian state, so the state of Ghana in Africa, us that were there, were found kings. What else?
Princes,
governors, generals,
treasurers,
people that understood finances. Go ahead.
Revenue agents, judges, architects, engineers, doctors, historians, land gauge entrepreneurs, mathematicians, jewelers, sculptors, masons, carpenters, painters of art, goldsmiths, leather workers, potters, armorers, saddlers, blacksmiths, agriculturists, and etc.
You understand how many different things they just named off? So when I say that this is a curse from God, it's not because we lack the ability, and this thing was dead. It's not because we lack the ability, it's because because we fighting against God. We have started to fight against God now. So when I say that we were not slaves, like the entire existence of being slaves, we were not. Okay, cool. The entire existence of being slaves. In other words, our people were not born slaves. They were doctors. They were lawyers and mathematicians. They took a lawyer and turned him into a cotton-picking slave. They took a doctor and brought that doctor to America and made him pick cotton from sunup to sundown. They took teachers, mathematicians, and judges and made them into slaves. But what it does is it messes with the minds of the people when you teach them that you come from slaves. No, I don't. I come from greatness. And those people were made to pick cotton. Can you imagine that? You was a doctor, prominent business, you heal people, and a man captured you and put you on the bottom of a ship and brought you over here. And now you use a hoe to till land all day. They just use you for labor. Cursed shall thou be in the field. Same thing today, your job field, last hired, first fired, pensions going away, no 401k. They want us to work till we 75 years old. They want you to work until you get off work and die that day. That's what they want. That's a curse. To never find no ease. What am I showing? I'm showing that this happened to a particular group of people. This did not happen to everybody. Nobody has this long history of being slaves like this. Listen. Curse shall be thy basket and stores, talking about the businesses that happen. Our businesses are cursed. That's why a black businessman is celebrated. No, he's doing it for the culture. But we had businesses. We had businesses. That's what we were. But under those curses in Deuteronomy 28, that's why you go to the black business saying open at 8 o'clock, you get there at 10:30, they still don't be open. Try to order you some food and be all out of the food at 4 o'clock, they close at 10 o'clock. The inability to be able to do these things. The red summer of 1919 when they burned down everything, Detroit destroyed summer of 1967 during the riots. Businesses being destroyed. Meaning you can build, but the Lord is going to continue to throw down. Why? Because we refuse to keep his commandments. For some reason, what Moses said what happened to the Israelites fits us to the T. And for some reason, we have no idea who we are. Today we hope to put the pieces to the puzzle together. Cursed shall be the fruit of our body. How many of y'all know about gator bacon? Crazy stuff that they did to us, ain't it? You'd be hard pressed to look in history and see somebody else's kids that was fed to alligators. Yeah, there was no Korean War where the Koreans were fed to alligators. There was no slavery of Polish people where they came and were fed to alligators. That happened to us. As we click through these slides, you'll see that all of these things happened to the Israelites. From the time that you're born to the time you get old, cursed shalt thou be when thou goest in, and cursed shalt thou be when thou goest out. You're born a slave, you die a slave. You're born and pump you with all these new vaccines as soon as you pushed out of your mama's body. You need a birth certificate, you got to go to them. You need a death certificate, you got to go to them. To not have the autonomy to move how you want to move. You got our sisters trying to have home births and going to jail for it now. Oh, you endangered the life of your baby by having them at the house. But you have them at the hospital, you get you a $25,000, $30,000 bill to go with it. We fit these curses, y'all. Let's get to the next slide. Read that. Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 20.
The book of Deuteronomy, chapter 28, verse 20. The Lord shall send upon thee cursing, vexation, and rebuke, in all that thou settest thine hand unto for to do.
Listen, it's been a lot of us that have had innovative ideas. A lot of people have came up with great things that we could do as a people to succeed, right? We went over it. Black Wall Street, Lake Lanier, Rosewood, Florida. But the Lord said, when you go to set your hand to do something, you're just going to find vexation. Until when?
Until thou be destroyed. And until thou perish quickly. Because of the wickedness of thy doings, whereby thou hast forsaken me.
Here's the thing. Now that we're under the curses, it's important that brothers get out and spread this word so our people can know the reason to why we go through the hell that we have to go through. So that they can know why this happens to somebody like Trayvon Martin. All our other brothers that have been killed throughout the years, unjustly. And I'll tell you the second part of it. It's not just the fact that they're killed unjustly. You have to add the insult to injury on top of it that the people that are doing the killing are never held liable for killing them. Imagine that. You live a perfectly normal life, law-abiding citizen, never been in jail, never done nothing wrong, and you're driving down the street and you see the red and blue lights behind you, and your life flashes before your eyes. That's a curse. That's the vexation. That's the rebuke that the curses of Deuteronomy 28 are talking about, you know. Diseases that would come for us not keeping the commandments. Read that, 21.
Verse 21. The Lord shall make thee pestilence cleave unto thee, until he have consumed thee from off the land whither thou goest to possess it.
We see that all the time. A lot of different diseases that happen in our community and don't happen in other communities. It's amazing if you look up the statistics for HIV, for gout, diabetes, heart disease. And you go to a doctor, they'll tell you, hey, this is hereditary. Yeah, it's passed down from your fathers, from your mothers. No, it ain't. The food you eat is passed down from your mothers and fathers. Your lack of exercise is passed down from your mothers and fathers. The way in which you prepare the food is passed down from your mother and father. If everybody's eating the same thing, not exercising, preparing the food the same way, trying to eat survival meals, y'all know the stuff we have to eat when you're growing up just to get some food in your belly. That stuff leads to these diseases.
23. And thy heaven that is over thy head shall be brass, and the earth that is under thee shall be iron.
Listen to what it says. It says, the heaven that's over you shall be brass, and the earth that's underneath you shall be iron. Who else had brass and iron over their head and on their ankles? It is amazing how accurate Deuteronomy 28 is when you line it up with so-called African American history and Hispanic history as well. It is undeniable. Like I said, by the time you leave here, if you sit through this, you don't know that before we was Negroes, we was the Israelites. Shout out to the men that put this presentation and these slides together, because it's on point. Brass above you, brass below. Shackles at iron. Y'all know what this is for? Who knows? Right? Runaway slave. That's how you had to sleep. They couldn't trust you. Try to run away every night. So they put bells on your head so that when you run it, they hit the bells. If you got far away, the dogs would hit the bells and be able to track you down. So that slave, before he could even run, the first thing he would do is try to figure out a way to get this off of his neck. Here's something else you got to look at. You see what this is? Can't even get to the lock, buddy. Hey, read Deuteronomy chapter 28 and verse 22.
The book of Deuteronomy, chapter 28 and verse 22.
You got to imagine when Moses is telling the Israelites that this is going to happen to them, you got to think, they listening to it, but they like, well, ain't no way. How's somebody going to do all of that to us? That's impossible. Look how many of us, and you telling me they going to do that to all of us? What we going to do, just stand here and take it? Over the process of time. Over the process of time. The Lord is real, man. We'll move on. Family. Mind work. All in the Bible. Deuteronomy 28, read 24.
Verse 24. The Lord shall make the rain of thy land powder and dust. From heaven shall it come down upon thee, until thou be destroyed.
Let's keep going.
25.
Verse 25.
Verse 25. The Lord shall curse thee to be smitten before thine enemies.
What is this talking about? It's talking about war. You think we had civilizations all over the west coast of Africa, but we did not have a military. We had militaries, y'all. Remember what we just read? It said we had generals. We had infrastructure, so you had to have a way to protect it. What you'll learn is that the Israelites in America today, calling themselves African Americans, you're actually prisoners of war. You went to war with Native African tribes.
What club was that at?
That was admit that a lot of people don't even realize they.
I've called her. She hasn't responded. I've called her more than a few times.
But the Zulu nation, I'm like, what the hell is this? I know nobody know what I'm talking about. You'll leave me on the island by myself. I don't know what the hell Bishop's talking about. That's what y'all do. Then after class, yeah, I knew what you were talking about. I just don't want to be caught out there. The hell is this? Get on my damn nerves. So read that again, 31.
Routes. When we would get our behinds kicked, and they would put us into slavery and move us everywhere around the planet. This is prior to the transatlantic slave trade. We have been being moved around the earth. This book here called The Black Holocaust. It details us in China during the Tang Dynasty, how we built the first great walls of China as slaves. When we were captured and taken into slavery. Your history is a lot richer than what they want to tell you. You definitely did not start at the bottom of a slave ship. Trans-Saharan slave trade again. Taking us everywhere, all around the Sahara Desert. And then that little arrow is pointing back east. When you get time, look up Afro-Iranian, Afro-Iraqi. You're going to look at them, you're going to think that this is Brother Jamal in the hood. I guarantee it. Deuteronomy 28:26, sir.
Verse 26. And thy carcass shall be meat unto all fowls of the air.
A lot of death, y'all. Go ahead.
And unto the beasts of the earth. And no man shall fray them away.
Death upon death upon death. Mass graves. When they went to build a building in New York, they tried to dig to build the foundation of the building in New York and started digging up black bodies. Skulls that had decayed over a process of hundreds of years from mass graves that were built. No man coming to help. This is a wounded knee massacre that happened. Many wars that happened in America while people were killed like this. Many, many wars. The difference between us and our ability and the other nations that America may have conquered was our inability to be able to fight back. It's hard to fight against the tanks, machine guns, Gatling guns when you have a hunting rifle. All of those things are meant for self-defense, brothers. It is not meant to fight another military. In order to fight a military, you need a lot more than just an AK-47 or AR-15. Trust me. There's military strategy. There's the moving of personnel. There's the moving of equipment that you need to fight the battle. There's strongholds that need to be built. There's a lot that goes into it. That's why brothers that talk about violence and let's come together and let's pick up guns. Do you understand they can turn the water off? Mm-hmm. What happens if they turn the water off in the city where our stronghold is? I'm just saying, if it's 1,000 of us, everybody need a gallon of water a day. Where are you gonna get that water from? How many days before we surrender? That's why this is important to know. Because then you won't have carnal solutions to biblical problems. Our issues in our community is on a biblical scale. It is not on a physical scale. That's why we get to change the minds of the people. Dogs. During the Crusades and during the Inquisition, the conquistadors sick dogs on us. These people were not naked when they got here. They stripped them naked. It's important that I mention that because they want us to look like savages whenever they tell our history. Heads off. These are actual pictures and actual renderings that were done by a man by the name of Bartholomew de las Casas. He was here and he witnessed it. He had an artist to sketch up the things that they were seeing because back then they didn't have pictures. So they would have to draw them. He actually came with the conquistadors so you can, if he had to side with anybody, he would side with the conquistadors. So for him to actually make these drawings and renderings, that means this stuff really happened. In other words, me and you go to a party, I ain't gonna make you look bad when we leave. If anything, I'm gonna give you the benefit of the doubt because we came here together. But he could not deny the atrocity that will happen and it was seen before his eyes. We put it in the book for us to now see today. More diseases. Hemorrhoids and things like that. When you start going into the medical field, right? We got a book over here called Medical Apartheid. It talks about all of these diseases and things that we would go through as a people. When you read that book, Medical Apartheid, they use slaves for a lot of their medical advantages today. There was a saying that blacks didn't feel pain. They would do exploratory surgeries with no anesthesia, no pain medicine. The thing is, and what I want you brothers to continue to keep in mind is these things happen to the Israelites according to Moses in the Bible. Today we know what happened to us. That's how we know we're Israelites. Watch this, verse 28.
Verse 28. The Lord shall smite thee with madness and blindness and astonishment of heart.
How many of y'all got that one crazy family member? You'd be like, hey, yeah, that's just Uncle Jack. Y'all know Uncle Jack crazy. As a matter of fact, it seems like all the women in the family be told their kids, now look, we get here, you know, Uncle Jack a little crazy. Mental issues is what this is going into. How many of y'all been riding down the street, you just saw a brother just out his mind somewhere in La La Land? That's this, y'all. You'd be hard pressed to go up to Carmel and be riding through Carmel and an Edomite just walking down the street, yelling and screaming, or halfway limped over, look like he about to die. You'd be hard pressed to see these things from the other nations. 29.
Verse 29. And thou shalt grope at noonday, as the blind gropeth in darkness, and thou shalt not prosper in thy way.
It's saying that the things that we do won't prosper. It says that we won't prosper in our ways. Watch this. Discrimination. Stress. You're talking about a man losing his mind. Scripture says, surely oppression will make a wise man mad. Enough oppression, you will go crazy from the racism, the discrimination, the poverty, the violence. You'll go crazy from seeing these things. Growing up in the hood, seeing your first dead body, you 4, 5, 6 years old. You know that desensitizes a man? You wonder how these young brothers can ride down blocks and shoot each other and blow each other's brains out, then make songs about it. What if that's all you saw your whole life? Nobody's taking that into account. How can this 22-year-old, how can this 17-year-old be caught 4 or 5 bodies? That's all he knows. A lot of them brothers, especially in Chicago, because I was in Chicago for a little while. You know, a lot of them brothers never been from their neighborhood, their little block, to downtown Chicago. A lot of them never even been downtown Chicago. And they be 17, 18, 19, 20 years old. Downtown is 20 minutes away. They got a train that can take them there in 5 minutes. But they know trying to get to that train is a death sentence. They'll never go to that train stop and have to wait there for the train to come or for a bus to come. And somebody from the neighboring block see them waiting on that bus stop. What is that? That's stress, y'all. That's the poverty. That's the violence. That stuff creates mental disorders. Again, issues that you only see in our community. 28 and 30.
Verse 30. Thou shalt betroth a wife, and another man shall lie with her.
It said when you get married, somebody else gonna lay with your wife. Woo! That will hurt, brothers. Go ahead.
Thou shalt build an house, and thou shalt not dwell therein. Thou shalt plant a vineyard, and thou shalt not gather the grapes thereof.
What is that talking about? It's talking about slavery. Why would a man plant a vineyard and not be able to eat of the vineyard that he planted? Because he's a slave. Free labor. Why would a man marry a wife and another person lay with? I'm gonna tell you something. Today, us as a people, we celebrate every holiday under the sun, right? 4th of July, New Year's, Christmas. You know that was the most dangerous time for a slave. If you was a woman, for the 4th of July and you was a slave, Lord Jesus, they was coming for you that night. Or if it was master's birthday or master's best friend's birthday, they was coming. Because our women were a novelty to them at that time. But read it again, it said that what will happen?
Thou shalt betroth a wife, and another man shall lie with her.
What's happening here? Why he getting with her? Because that's his wife. What's funny is you would think that I was reading this from an African American history book and not from the Bible. You would think that all of these things that we're showing it actually comes from, I don't know, one of these books that I have on the table. But it doesn't. It actually comes from what Moses said what happened to the Israelites. Showing you who we are before they put us on the bottom of the slave ships. How many of y'all saw this movie, 12 Years a Slave? Yeah. Real life. Undeniable. The atrocities that we have went through in America is in the Bible for the Israelites to have to go through. Same thing in London. Same thing on the Cayman Islands. Same thing in Jamaica or Haiti. Same thing in China or Iraq or Iran. Did y'all see what happened in Wuhan, China during COVID? Who the Chinese blamed COVID on? They blamed COVID on the black residents of China. They started evicting them, beating them in the streets. You can't make this up. Why? Because our brothers and sisters that are in China will go through these curses as well. Whatever the Lord shall lead. Another man lying with her. We don't like to talk about this one right here. See, we're comfortable with the one where it's the other nations and they forced it, but what about now? What about the decay of a brotherhood to where now I'll look a man in his face and still be laying with his wife behind his back? You know what's funny? A lot of our brothers go to jail. And the man that get with their woman be their homeboy that they was doing dirt with the whole time they was outside the jail. The curses is not exclusive to just what happens to the other nations do to us. A lot of this stuff you're going to learn and we do it to ourselves as well. Because in the culture of African Americans, we don't have to love our neighbors as we love ourselves. That's not an African American community standard. That's not something that we share with each other. That's an Israelite standard. That's something that Israelites do. They love their neighbor as they love themselves. They look out for their brother. They don't lay with their neighbor wives. African Americans, everybody fair game. Pick up the phone, hey bro, you was laying with my wife. Hey, you need to talk to your wife about that. I ain't got nothing to do with that. You do have something to do with that. That's your brother. Oxen slain by the millions. Try to speed this up a little bit. I'm gonna tell y'all something about these pictures. Believe it or not, these are all ox skulls. During the time when there was the great migration to the west of the United States, the so-called Native Americans, who are Israelites, according to the Bible, their entire, how can I put it? Their way of living was surrounded by the buffalo. There were so many buffalo that they could not destroy them without first destroying their food source. So what they did was they masked it under a felt trade. And they made it seem as if due to the felt trade, you could come down and we could trade in the hinds of these animals. But it was really to starve out the population. Because that was their source for food, that was their source for clothing, that was their source for bones, for that they would make spoons out of and bowls out of. And they killed them out of truckloads. And that's in the Bible. Read 31.
31. Thine ox shall be slain before thine eyes, and thou shalt not eat of them.
He said not only will it be killed, but it's not going to be killed for you to use it. Somebody else will kill it. Go ahead.
Thine ass shall be violently taken away from before thy face, and shall not be restored to thee. Thy sheep shall be given unto thine enemies, and thou shalt have none to rescue them.
Listen, this is real life. I like to tell people that I know the Bible is a real book, y'all. The Bible is a real book. It's really happened to us. I don't need to go to my mom and daddy and ask my mom and daddy, did this happen, this factual, this actually happened in history. My mom and daddy can't erase what's in the history books. Here's a good one. 28:13.
Verse 32. Thy sons and thy daughters shall be given unto another people.
Listen, this is Moses telling Israelites that their sons and daughters are going to be taken from them and given to another people, not people of their own race, not people of their own nation, not people of their own nationality that keep their own customs. No, to a people that's not y'all. Go ahead.
And thine eyes shall look and fail with longing for them all the day long.
And what?
And there shall be no might in thine hand.
Listen, how many of y'all ever seen Roots? Roots was a good movie. You remember when Kunta Kinte's daughter, what's her name, Cassie? When she got taken and they cried and cried and cried in bed. 12 Years a Slave was heart-wrenching, and for the first part of the whole movie, because the lady kept crying and crying and crying. The scripture saying there shall be no might in thy hand. What type of might would you need? You got a military might, meaning you could fight and be able to keep your kids. You could have a financial might where you could pay to get them out of slavery. We had none of it. We had none of the ability to do these things. Find me the Chinese slave auction where the kids were being sold. That's all I'm saying. Where is it? Where's the European slave auction where the little European boys and girls are being sold? It don't exist, y'all. But it has been embedded into our conscience that we come from this. And I'll tell you something. I thank God that they taught it to us. I thank God that they taught us that we were slaves. And they took pictures. And they kept their souvenirs. And they passed out postcards. Because now today we can look at everything that happened to us and go back to what Moses told the Israelites and say, oh my God, y'all. Not only are we not Negroes and niggas. Not only are we not African American, but we hit the lottery, y'all. We the Israelites. We are the Israelites. Oh my gosh. You talking about hitting the lottery. You talking about the ultimate prize. Because if you know anything about that Bible, the things that are promised to the Israelites, oh my gosh. And the things that are promised to their enemies that did this time. But I digress. Back to normal, our regularly scheduled programming. This is what happens to us, y'all. Children being sold. Breeding farms where a mother push out a baby, wean the baby for 6 months, sold into sleep. Never saw that child again.
Verse 33. The fruit of thy land and all thy labors shall a nation which thou knowest not eat up.
What does it mean that thou knowest not? This is going back to that transatlantic slave trade, that sub-Saharan slave trade. We didn't know nothing about America over the west coast of Africa. We didn't know nothing about Portugal and all of that on the west coast of Africa. We didn't know about these things. We didn't know nothing about speaking English. We ain't know nothing about speaking Spanish. We ain't know nothing about speaking German. When they came and grabbed us, or the Dutch, when they came and grabbed us from the west coast of Africa, it's another nation that we didn't know. Go ahead.
And thou shalt be only oppressed and crushed always.
Look at that word. Thou shalt only be oppressed and crushed always. Are black people oppressed today?
Yes, sir.
Man, you know, we got some of our people that don't think so. But that's, I'm going to tell you something. That is a product of thinking as an individual. When you think as an individual, which is what they have trained the African American to do, the YOLO, the I got mine, you need to get yours, hey, I worked hard for this, that's it. We are the only people on the planet that does not think nation-minded. That does not think I cannot push myself to a level that is past what my people are. Right? I say it all the time, I am not better than you, I'm better with you. We're the only people that don't think that, y'all. Especially us as men. We'll chop each other's head off to get to the top. Go ahead.
So that thou shalt, excuse me,
Yeah, go ahead.
34.
Yep.
So that thou shalt be mad for the sight of thine eyes.
Wouldn't it make you mad if you had to do this all day? You never even got the chicken cane? They would kill slaves and whip them if one chicken came up missing. No one of you blacks stole that chicken. Everybody get whipped until the person confessed. The person that stole it, Lord Jesus. The level of torture they would submit him to. This is our actual history. And it's so accurate that I got to keep reminding y'all that I'm reading out of the Bible. I ain't reading from no history book of what happened to us that was written in 1804. I'm reading out the Bible with Moses telling the Israelites that this would happen to them. And it all lined up so perfect, so beautiful. Picking cotton all day. Brothers got bad knees and sores and bumps. All in the scriptures. Watch this. Read that 36.
Verse 36. The Lord shall bring thee and thy king, which thou shalt set over thee, unto a nation which neither thou nor thy fathers have known.
Remember we read that book, Babylon and Timbuktu. The first thing it said that we had in that Jewish Guyanian state was what?
Jesus.
Was kings. It said, I'm going to take you and the people that you set over you, all y'all going to go into slavery together. Go ahead.
And there shalt thou serve other gods, wood and stone.
Touchy subject for black folk right there. Black folk don't like nobody saying nothing about the God they serve, but I'm going to tell you something. Moses told the Israelites they'd be serving gods of wood and stone. I ain't put it in the book, y'all. And I ain't here to lie to you either. It would be counterproductive for us to set up all this and then I sit there and lie to you. Moses said that the Israelites would serve wood and stone. And look at this. Especially our Hispanic brothers and sisters. What we got to start doing is we got to start peeling back the layers of what we were taught. So that we can get to the root causes so that we can figure out whether or not the things that we were taught were actually factual or were they lies. And listen, ain't no shame of being lied to, y'all. Right? You gotta imagine this a kid. You got a kid, you teach him your ABCs and you leave off the letter R. That kid will walk his whole life thinking he knows his ABCs. You ask me, you know your ABCs? Yeah, I know my ABCs. I ain't say it. It ain't until somebody showed him the letter R and he's like, dang, this whole time. That's why I get all my spelling tests wrong, man. That's why I ain't got the answers. Because I was never taught this in the beginning. So there's nothing wrong with being an adult and not knowing. There's nothing wrong with having to take a step back and, damn, I was lied to. I ain't know no better. As a matter of fact, I'll go out on a limb and say that's why all the brothers in purple you see, we all had to come to that conclusion. We all had to say, dang, well, I ain't know that about us. I ain't know that was in the Bible. For those of you that I knew that just came in, we're teaching who we are before slavery. We got a rich history that we're going through. What we're going through right now is the curses that are in the Bible in Deuteronomy 28. These are the things that Moses said would happen to the Israelites. When you start examining the things that Moses said would happen to the Israelites, you easily come to the conclusion that Bible prophecy is actually African American history now. When you start going through these curses, you're going to see that the things that Moses said would happen to the Israelites have all happened to us.
What is a nation? Nation is family. Nation is community. Nation is men leading by example. Nation is women's support. Nation is children with role models. Nation is unity. Nation is